So it's kind of hard to see. And this boat here just came out of nowhere. And it's going way too fast. Welcome back. We're back at Bodega Bay, crabbing in the pea soup here. The ocean conditions were fine. The visibility was pretty poor, maybe 100 feet or so. And today I want to talk about some safety issues regarding just going out in the fog like this, how to handle it, and also kind of just crabbing in general, some of the method, whether it's in the fog or not. Uh, the fog being thick like this makes kind of there's some benefits in that, with that the boaters that generally fly in and out of the harbor here that we have to cross go much slower, they're much safer, and for the most part, except that first boat, it was probably the only one that was behaving like that. But slower than what he probably would have been going. So that was kind of a benefit of going out in the fog like this. That the motorboaters are generally slower and just safer. Going out in conditions like this, you should always have your radio, like always, and GPS and the compass to know where you are, or at the very least a cell phone. Uh, if you have cell reception, so you could use Google Maps or something to figure out which direction you need to head. Here, funny, I had a radio and I decided to leave my GPS and compass back on in my car. I no, I'll admit I get lazy sometimes, and just don't bring things. Like most of the times, I don't bring my GoPro. Uh, it's a nice pot, nice looking pot. Uh, at Bodega Bay, there is that foghorn at the end of the jetty that I could hear, and I always made sure that I didn't paddle so far that I couldn't hear it. So I could always paddle back towards the end of the jetty and then make my way back in. Any place else, I definitely would have taken uh, at my GPS or compass with me. Um, but here, I just felt too comfortable. The GPS would have been nice in these conditions. Even the cell phone with a kind of a map marker app to mark where the your pots are, because it was very hard to find your pot um, after going back out to check on them. It was definitely it took a while to find each pot, because you had to kind of remember where they were, and then from one to the next pot, and then when you start moving the pots, it gets a little bit harder to find them. So what I'm doing here is I'm rebaiting it, and I have some herring that I loaded up this pot with, uh, and just cutting them up to get more of a scent in the water. So for bait, uh, what I like to use chicken. I like to use herring that I caught during herring season, during the herring spawning run, and then whatever else, fish carcass, squid I like. Just mix it all up, because they might be coming in for one bait might work better than the other, and if you have it all, just cover your bases. Here, I'm after going through the pod, I'm redeploying the pod right back in the same location. Um, that other pod, the first pod you saw in this video, that was full of rock crab, which isn't the species I'm targeting. What you didn't see me do is just load that pod back on my kayak and take it out, move it. And I see this quite a bit, where if
Soupy out here.
when people pull a pot and there's nothing in it, or there's a bunch of rock crab which they just dump out, they toss it right back in the same location. If you're looking for dungeness crab, I believe they generally aren't in a place where there are rock crab. It's been my experience. So sometimes you get a mixture, but for the most part, if you're catching a bunch of small rock crab, the dungeness aren't there. And so if you pull up a pot like that, you should move your pot. Again, I see a lot of people just dump their pot right back in the same location again. Um, so something else that I do is you see that pot in the bow of my boat. If I pull up a pot and it looks good like this one, and I will redeploy a pot while I'm kind of going through them like this. And
Too small.
this one wasn't
Too sad.
a real good pot, I believe, because they're small. But the dungeons are here. Again, I didn't pull up rock crab in this pot. I just a bunch of dungeons, even though they were small. That means this is a place where the dungeness are located. So I'm redeploying this pot here. I'm checking my time. I like to have a watch on and check the time so I can come back an hour. And I check it every hour because, again, if the crabs aren't there, you're just wasting your time. Um, so I'll check in an hour and then come back and either redeploy it like this one or move it. And that's kind of how I fish. And this season, the the crabbing here has been kind of been slow, and so it takes a long time to kind of zero in on the crab. In this thick fog, it was hard to find the next pot. And as I started locating the crab, I would move my pots closer and closer, kind of trying to zero in on where they're located. I spread my pot out in one direction, from the jetty towards the rock and the island out there, which you could actually hear the surf breaking out there because the seas were pretty big. So the waves do break out there. And then once I find kind of the area where they're hitting, I'll kind of spread them out perpendicular to that try to find the biggest mass of crab. I think, my experience, they're just kind of spread out here.
Wind started to pick up a little bit.
So,
Fog's coming back in.
no, this day the fog.
Line right here. First one in line. Moving farther out.
So the fog did break, and then would come back in and break, and so it was surprisingly so much easier to find your pots when the fog wasn't in.
I always like to pull on my left side for some reason.
Sorry about the audio. There's a little bit of echo because the voiceover is picking up the audio from the video itself.
Doesn't feel too heavy. Doesn't feel that good.
So I said this in one of my other videos, and I'm gonna say it again here, is that that yellow kind of H-licking float on this pot is to keep the line coiled up. And it's very important, especially if you have floating line, to have a way to keep that line short as possible, not straight down. You want some scope, and also account for what the tide's doing, whether it's coming in or going out. But you don't want it too long sitting on floating on top, because it's a hazard to the boats, and you don't want a boat to come by and chop your line in their prop, or get it tangled in their prop and they'll just come and cut it. Um, so yeah, be careful with that. Keep your line short and make sure nothing's floating on the surface. Right now, all my pots are lined up because I've been moving them throughout the day. Just finding where the crabs are located. So there's the next one right here and the one further up. And I'm going to move this pot out of the way so I could deal with this one when I pull it up. And again, the little tail buoy there to kind of be able to identify that it's my pot from a little further away. And I've noticed more and more pots like this. I'm pointing out to my next pot. Again, they're all lined up. So this one feels heavy, but I pulled up a lot of rock crab, some pots with a bunch of seaweed. Sometimes at the end of the day, I'm just tired. But this pot here, kind of towards the later end of the day, was my best pot. And just looking inside, there's obviously keepers in there, more than just one. So I'm gonna make sure they can't get out here. And then I'm gonna reach back here and grab that spare pot and redeploy it right on top of where I pulled this one up, because there might be more down there just waiting that this couldn't get in. So again, I have 5 at this point. I just need 5 more to limit. So I'm gonna put this one down. Again, make sure the length of the line is not too long. Again, if it's the tide's coming in, you want it a little bit longer. And if the tide's going out, you can give it a little shorter. So I'm gonna get my game bag ready, and my bag has a yellow line that's tied to the bag and tied to my kayak, and then I got another clip that's attached to a bungee that's clipped on. So there's no way like I'm gonna lose my bag. So this is a nice size keeper. Not huge. Nothing that day was really big. Some of them were decent size, but no. So that's number 6. And number 7. And again, these gloves really help out because these crabs have very sharp exoskeleton. They'll poke you with their feet. And this is number 8 going into the bag. So there's 3 keepers from this pot. Now 3 is a really good number coming out of a pot. And this one is just a hair too small. And if you're not sure, it's you're better to toss it and not pay that big hefty fine. So I've tossed back a lot that were just under or just barely legal, because I might measure it one way, but the game warden might measure it another way, which should be the same way. So again, I'm redeploying this pot right on top of, or right back down, right next to my other pot. And there's a little bit of drift as I'm sorting through this, so it's not right on top of it, but it's pretty darn close.
Okay, so that was a good 3.
So right now, all my pots are pretty close to each other.
This one maybe?
There's my next one, and I can paddle up. So again, I've been moving my pots all day long if they haven't been producing or if they're nothing but reds in there. Um, red rock crabs are actually pretty tasty. It's just the shell's very hard to kind of break into while you're eating, trying to eat them, and there's not as much meat in the body and legs. The majority of the meat comes from the claws.
That was best part of the day.
And the best
It
part of the
wasn't
day.
that great.
And then this next pot, again,
Let's see
relatively
what this one
close.
does. This is all kind of close together, so
Yeah, all my pots are very close together. And this pot here is one of the conical ones. And these won't need that long. These you could check every few minutes actually, because the crab should have no problems finding the door. Again, it has a I have a cord keeper to manage the lines, so it's not too long. And towards the end of the day, the pots all feel like they have something in it. This one did have something in it. It had
feels good.
a bunch of seaweed in it.
Nothing.
So, and
Interesting.
looked like a rock crab. And so, yeah, this past couple of weeks there have been a lot of seaweed coming up. So there's a lot of debris kind of floating along the bottom of the ocean there. It's my last pot, I believe. And I'm at this point I had to get call it a day because I was running out of time. I had to get home. And with this pot came up kind of heavy because it's weighted. Is crab number 9. Just a single pot for an hour soak, or single crab for an hour soak.
By themselves.
Again, more seaweed. This one had tiny claws, like a little Tyrannosaurus Rex.
The biggest crab
So
of the day.
definitely keeper, but want to measure them just to be sure. And this one I'm just tossing back into the pot because I was done. I'm just going to collect my gear here and paddle back in. I believe my bag is underneath a pot that's in the back of the kayak. And again, once you're gathering up the line and everything, you don't wanna put it inside the pot because if something happens and you tip your kayak, unless you have a buoy that can keep your pot afloat, you want to keep your line and buoy outside. So if you drop them, you can retrieve your pot. Had people drop their their crab pot from their kayak, and their line, the buoy was all inside, and it just sunk right down to the bottom. So yeah, this day was no, it turned out to be a fairly decent day, coming back with 9 crabs. Um, but again, it's been hard crabbing lately, and things have changed. Been moving it around, finding them in different locations. Um, again, came back with 9 crabs and 9 dungeons and a couple of rock crab. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you go out there and get your share. And good luck. Be safe, and until next time, signing out.